Well, check.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to actually work for a beaver project and do beaver restoration? Like, how does it even work? What do we do every day? Is there even a typical day? And what are the different roles that have to be filled with this kind of group here at the Methow Beaver Project? Well, if you're wondering those questions, you're in luck, because this time for I'll Be Damned podcast, we are interviewing every single member of the Methow Beaver Project, all the employees that we have, to ask them those questions. What they do, what their title is, why they joined, what's the story of how they got to the Methow Beaver Project, and why they care about this kind of work. We're glad you can join in, and we'll just go ahead and get going. I'm your host, Josiah Shaver, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get into it.
Well, check.
Okay, so I'm here with Willy Dugauy here, and just going to ask him about what he's doing at the Methow Beaver Project. So, first question is, how did you get here?
Well, I started working with Alexa a few years ago on her master's research. She was visiting all kinds of beaver sites and fire impacted sites throughout the Methow Valley, and I just kind of helped out as a field research assistant on a lot of her master's research. So that's how I got connected with Alexa and the Beaver Project. And I for context, I grew up here, and I've spent a lot of time playing in the river and hiking around in the mountains and really just appreciating what the Methow Valley has to offer. And so I really love the opportunity to be able to work towards water security for our shared home and all that jazz. So
yeah, that's awesome. And you know, what is it like working where you grew up in the same watershed, same streams?
It's pretty wild, like just making all kinds of, or reconnecting with all kinds of people that I grew up around, but it's just a different context, like working in concert with all these different people in different avenues of life, and then being connected to them in different ways from growing up. Like, for example, our grant manager for MSurf is Deb Nickel, and I vaguely knew Deb Nickel growing up because she's actually in a book group with my mom, and so now I'm like sending emails back and forth with her and with sales reps from all these other places trying to procure equipment for our big projects that we're doing, and just having those background connections is pretty valuable to be able to, like work with someone and have an understanding of where we're all coming from. So it's pretty nice to be able to work in the place where I grew up, especially it being like a really small town community as it is. So
yeah, that's super cool. And for anybody that doesn't know, MSurf is Methow Salmon Recovery Foundation, and they're our parent organization. You'll probably hear more about them at a later time. And how long have you been with the Methow Beaver Project?
So I started July 1 of this year, which is about a month and a half ago now. So I'm still getting to know how things work around here, but so far I've been catching on pretty quick, I think, and it's been awesome.
Yeah, nice. It has been awesome. I started like 1 week before Willy, actually, for my summer internship. Can you tell us more about like why you care about beavers? And what this work means to you?
Totally. So when I started volunteering with Alexa a few years ago, I didn't really know much about beavers other than the fact that they build dams and they make ponds. And I guess I did sort of have an impression of like, yeah, they are ecosystem engineers and they create habitat for other species. But what I didn't realize was like their immense potential for like water resource management, and like for land managers to be able to partner with beavers to promote water security. And then there's the whole wildfire thing, which I'm sure you'll talk about with Alexa and others. But so all those additional benefits of beavers were totally new to me, of course. And I think it's just all the more awesome to be able to work with beavers and around beavers to be able to fight for water security in my own home. So
yeah, no kidding. Wow. And you know, can you tell us about like what, because you worked in wildfire, I'll just spill the beans.
Yeah.
Can you tell us like what that means to you now?
Yeah.
Working in beavers, which can
right.
help.
I mean, I come to the Methow Beaver Project with a lot of experience in working in wildland fire. So my dad started a wildland fire company in like 06 or so, and he owns like wildland fire engines, so that contract with local governments and the Forest Service and stuff like that to fight wildfires. So I've been doing that since 2015. Last year was my last full season. Last summer was my last full season of firefighting, and this season I actually am still working off and on for my dad, like on weekends in between the Beaver Project, which has certainly been a lot, but it's really nice to be able to have that connection still. But I think, you know, we just live in a very wildfire impacted community here, as with a lot of communities around the West, and increasingly so, which is kind of scary, kind of sad, but also like the reality that we're stuck with. So we need to find ways to address it, and I think hopefully beavers have a pretty large role to play in that conversation and that solution potentially. So
yeah. Is there a typical day for you? Or what does, I don't know, maybe a typical week?
For firefighting?
No, but like for working at the Methow Beaver Project.
Oh, yeah. Well, recently with all the fires, it's been a lot of office time, which kind of sucks, but it's also like we're doing a lot of good, necessary, you know, office work, a lot of paperwork, a lot of communication, a lot of preparation for our field work. So it hasn't been ideal, but now the smoke's clearing up. It's a beautiful day out today, not as hot, and we're starting to get back out in the field. And so yeah, our field work, a lot of that encompasses surveying sites. We do a little bit of trapping and relocating when our coexistence projects don't pan out. And the coexistence projects have actually been a large part of the office work I've been doing. Just drawing up plans and writing proposals to design like structures that will help beavers and humans coexist in situations where they're in conflict with one another. So that's been really exciting to be a part of. Like for example, over in the Tonasket area, we're working with the Department of Transportation to help them live with beavers where dams are starting to flood and build up sediment underneath a bridge. So we're our plan, at least our proposed design, is to put a pipe through the dams and allow water and sediment to pass through and not get impounded underneath the bridge and cause flooding and erosion. So we're trying to encourage land managers to be able to live with beavers and benefit from beavers' presence in terms of water storage and habitat and all that jazz. So
yeah, okay. What do you see yourself doing in the next few months, I guess, with Methow Beaver Project? And I don't know, do you know what's next for you in the few years?
Few years is a stretch for me. I'm kind of a 1 month at a time sort of guy right now, it's been really nice to be able to just like take the opportunities as they come. But like with the Methow Beaver Project in the coming months, I have a contract signed through October, so that's the definite. But I'm planning on re-signing a similar contract through the winter, probably working part-time with the Beaver Project and then also doing a little bit of subbing in the school district. My mom was a teacher for a long time in the Methow Valley School District, and I have pretty strong connection to the Independent Learning Center here in town, which is kind of the alternative track for high school students that for whom the traditional school system doesn't work really. And there's a really awesome staff there at the ILC who have created a really great community of awesome kids there. So I subbed there last winter, and I plan on doing a little bit of that this coming winter too. So
Nice.
that's kind of my short-term, long-term plan.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, and since you're the local, I want to
Uh-huh.
ask you how you say where we're at, the Methow?
Yeah. Methow.
it-
Methow.
Okay.
It's
'Cause-
whatever you say, don't say Methow, because that's the one that's wrong. As long
Which
as
is
you avoid
definitely-
that, like, you're
Yeah,
good.
that's definitely, I think it was my interview with Alexa, probably the first time I said Methow. She's
Yeah.
like, it's actually a Methow.
Yeah,
Like,
get it right.
you get it right. It sounds weird
We're
otherwise.
great. We're real nice people, but as long as you pronounce it right. Yeah.
You know, actually, we were talking about the fires that were around
Mhm.
here, but I don't know if all of our listeners are going to know about those. So what was it, like a month ago that those two fires started?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Thereabouts.
And this is like within 20 miles of us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and-
just other side of Winthrop, which is next town over. It's like 15 minutes away is
yeah.
where those fires got.
Winthrop and Mazama is the next town up, and Mazama was kind of the first one threatened. There's a lightning strike above on the mountain outside of Mazama, and then the fire was moving towards town. And yeah, I mean, our community's been through this before, but every time it happens, it's a wake-up call, and it's like, okay, get your shit in order, and like, you know, you gotta have all your photo albums and all these other things ready to go, ready to evacuate, which is a real emotional strain for a community when it all happens at once. And yeah, my sister's mother and father-in-law got evacuated, and no, I'm sorry. My sister's grandparents-in-law,
Okay.
but yeah. Anyways, I had family that was evacuated, and it's just really scary. Like, those people have lived in this area for 50 odd years, and when their ranch is threatened, like, that's their whole lives. They're connected to the land and everything. So it's really hard, but it's a reality that we're gonna have to live with in the coming decades. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and we hope that beavers are part of the solution with wildfire.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. Well, that's all I got for you today, Willy.
Okay,
So
thanks, Josiah.
thanks for sitting down, and yeah,
All
I'll
right.
see you around.
Excellent. All right, so one thing I forgot to mention in our main interview segment was something I think is super important and needs to be said, is that one of the main solutions for this whole wildland fire situation is to look towards Indigenous fire management practices. Historically, the Indigenous people of North America were professional fire managers and did incredible things to maintain a stable fire ecosystem, and I think modern practices have a lot to learn from that, but we should also just hand over the reins in a lot of cases to Indigenous fire managers, because there are a lot of Indigenous people that are managing fire on the landscape today, and maybe they just haven't had the opportunity to be in decision-making spaces and be in charge of that kind of thing, except on the small pieces of land that we've given them or forced them onto. So just something to keep in mind for the future. Like, that is where a lot of solutions could come from, is Indigenous voices.
Well,
Check.
okay. Next of our employees here at the Methow Beaver Project Here I'm talking to Joe Weirich, and I'll just let him tell his story. Joe, like, how did you find Methow Beaver Project? What's the story there?
So I found out about the Methow Beaver Project when I came out to visit our director, Alexa, at the beginning of my graduate school career. I went and visited my advisor, Dr. Brown, at EWU, and then she had told me that I should come out and shadow a couple grad students and get a feel about what being a graduate student was like and what kind of projects they were into, which is what brought me out to the Methow, where I met with Alexa and helped her do a couple of her vegetation surveys, but then, kind of got to learn more about the Methow Beaver Project as they were helping her find her beaver complexes where she was doing her study. And then, from there I kind of got involved, coming back once in a while to volunteer, doing releases, working the booth, stuff like that. So I've been kind of affiliated with the Methow Beaver Project since about 2019.
Nice.
Yeah. And then later on, when I decided that I was also into beavers, I worked a lot closer with the Methow Beaver Project as they helped me, gave me a lot of data and helped me figure out where I was in the valley and stuff like that while I did my project.
Okay. Did you mention, is this Eastern Washington University?
That's correct.
Okay, got it. And is there like a typical day for you, or more of like, how does this work go in terms of what, let me just say this, what are the different projects that you do?
Yeah, so I do a lot of different things for the Methow Beaver Project. My official title is the Restoration Coordinator, which basically I back Alexa up. She has come up with this awesome idea to put in a restoration project using, low-tech process-based restoration structures around the valley. And my job is to help give her data and help advise with how to actually carry out that project, as well as manage like logistics in the field and data collection, monitoring, stuff like that. So my day-to-day really depends on what we're doing, because when we're working on the restoration project, but we're also maintaining or carrying out the initial Methow Beaver Project goal, which is to serve as a coexistence organization between beavers and the public. And so when I'm not helping coordinate our restoration projects, I'm serving as the lead trapper for the Methow Beaver Project, as well as doing other things for coexistence, like installing fencing, and then often going to our restoration projects that are around the valley and monitoring and stuff like that, collecting data, putting out dissolved oxygen flow or flow measurements, that kind of stuff like that.
Okay. Can you talk about the mapping work you do?
Yeah, so in addition to being an ecologist, I also have like a dual, profession as a GIS analyst. So I use ArcMap and all the public and proprietary data to help plan these restoration projects. So I do a lot of mapping, lots of focusing on relative elevation, looking at low-lying areas, stream beds, old, disconnected floodplains and stuff like that, and trying to figure out where, if beaver were to move into an environment, or where we were to put a restoration structure that would mimic a beaver dam, where the impacts would be. So if we put a beaver complex in here, would it, help? Would this be a good place to put a structure to help connect the stream to its previous floodplain, or to try to erode one bank over the other, or scour it out, or potentially provide habitat for fish or something like that. So I use a lot of geographic data to help solve environmental questions.
Nice.
That way.
Yeah. Okay. Can you talk?
I guess which kind of segues into my other role as I'm a trained FAA certified drone pilot, and so that's a new direction we're going with our program, is to collect our own proprietary data and use drones to monitor our sites, as well as judge the efficacy of what we're doing. So that's a new tool in our arsenal as well.
Yeah, and that's really cool. I was able to go to a different site where we did some drone work with Joe, and it's super cool. Can you talk about why you want to work for the Methow Beaver? What does it mean to you, and what motivates you to work with beavers and do this kind of work?
Absolutely. So it's going to be kind of a long-winded response in that I got into restoration when I was in my undergrad, but I quickly realized I kind of picked the wrong major. If I wanted to actually be doing restoration projects, that was a lot of engineering, involved in that, and I wasn't an engineer. I was more trained to, collect data and monitor someone else's restoration project than I was prepared to actually do my own. And so over time, I kind of realized, I was specialized in a way that wouldn't let me actually control the actual restoration project that I was doing. And when I got to the Methow Beaver Project, I realized working with beavers would allow me to kind of do all of that, because beaver are these, ecosystem engineer themselves, fostering their, I guess, development and their population across the landscape could kind of help me be a part of the kind of restoration work that I wanted to be in, which was actually like doing the physical work. And even then, like an engineer designs the project, a guy who knows how to run a bulldozer builds it, and then I come in afterwards and say if it worked or not. And so with the Methow Beaver Project, I kind of get to do all three of those things at once by designing projects now, because we landed that awesome grant to help us put in beaver dam analogs and post-assisted log structures. So I get to plan the restoration work, and then I get to monitor it, and then hopefully, we also deal with the wildlife aspect and trying to get beaver into those sites to actually help us do that restoration work. And because most of our work is by hand, or all of our work is by hand, no big yellow machines, I get to take part in all of those. And that's really what I appreciate about working for the Methow Beaver Project, is that I get to do hands-on restoration and, promote a species that will do that for me when I clock out every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's all I got, so thanks for your time, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Nice.
Well, check.
Okay.
Hi, Josiah.
Hey.
Thanks for joining me on your podcast.
My pleasure.
I'm Alexa Whipple. I'm the project director for the Methow Beaver Project, and I am interviewing Josiah Shaver, who is our Methow Valley Fly Fisher sponsored intern for the summer with Methow Beaver Project and Methow Salmon Recovery Foundation, of which the Methow Beaver Project is a program of. So, Josiah, I would love to hear and have all of our audience hear what brought you to MVP from your perspective.
Okay, well, it's a long story. Starts back in 2018 when I got an email about a talk that someone was going to give at Oregon State University, where I was studying geology at the time, about beavers. And this guy wrote a book, apparently. I was like, okay, this sounds kind of interesting. I'll check it out. It ended up being Ben Goldfarb, who wrote this amazing book called Eager. And I was captivated. During his talk, I was like, whoa, this is awesome. I bought the book on the spot, read the book, which is where I first heard about Methow Beaver Project, in the book. Since then, every summer since, I have tried to find an internship with beavers that wasn't just volunteer, because I did have to make some money. Didn't find anything, and I was like, oh man, how do I get into this? I was also thinking about grad school, which I'm now in at Oregon State, studying water resources policy and management, also water conflict management, and still, doing beaver school projects as I could fit them in. So I was thinking about grad school and looked for, grad school advisors that were doing active beaver research at Oregon State, in the Beaver State, Oregon, at Oregon State University, which has a mascot of a beaver, and couldn't find anybody that was actively doing research, which was a bummer. I ended up finding some other really awesome research and stuff to partner with for my degree. But, I was still looking to get into beavers, so finally I was like, you know what, I'm just going to email Methow Beaver Project and see if they have an internship or could create one for me. So I did. And that was like December of this last year. And you got back to me, Alexa, and said, that would be awesome. We don't have the funding for this at this time. But then you emailed me back a few months later saying, we found some funding for an intern. It's not a ton, but we have this funding with Methow Fly Fishers Club. Yeah. And go ahead and apply if you're still interested. So I did, and here I am, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a bumpy road to actually get you housing here.
Yeah.
As many of you listening might know, COVID sent a lot of people running from the cities and into smaller communities across the world, really, to try to have less human interaction, close-up interaction. And it has definitely changed the housing opportunity here in the Methow. It was already challenging, especially after the 2014 and 15 fires that burned over 300 homes. So a lot of people were already rebuilding, and housing was limited. But Josiah is very creative, as we've learned from him over the last month and a half, almost 2 months. He found a solution. We tried to find one for him. His was much better than what we were trying to create. So I'm so glad you made it here. So what have you been doing in a typical week while interning with the Methow Beaver Project?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's been a typical week, actually. It's been amazing. I would say roughly half my time has been field work, which is super cool because I love being outside, hiking around, taking photos of landscape for research purposes, and enjoying the sun. It's been really hot, but I'm fairly used to that. I've done a lot of field work. So maybe half my time is outside doing anything from site monitoring to helping install a fish microarray in a side channel, doing some work with drones, doing a lot of surveying with geomorphology, stream surveying, profiling. And then office work has been very fun because I've been able to do a bunch of different projects. Actually, before I even drove up here to Twist, Washington from Oregon, I got an offer to write for Water Resources Impact magazine because I know the editor, and he's like, would you like to write about something? I was like, this would be great. Can I write about beavers? And he said yes. And Methow Beaver Project, Alexa was graciously allowing me to use that time as internship time. So I was able to write that. That's now published in Water Resources Impact magazine, all about beavers and their benefits, but also the tricky aspects of beavers and how they're very frustrating often and what you can do to work with them. So that was really cool. Another thing that is super cool, well, of course, there's this podcast, which you guys, I'm sure, know about because you're listening to it. Working on that, we'll see where it goes. Another cool thing is, let me break down the concept of serious games first. Serious games are a way to engage different stakeholders in scenarios that often have a lot of conflict with different players needing to make collaborative decisions.
There's no better conflict than water conflict.
Often used for water conflict, and they've had very good success around the world in serious water games, getting different stakeholders to see things from a different perspective. One of my committee members at Oregon State University is actually doing research actively on serious games, Dr. Todd Jarvis, and so this is something I'm familiar with. I listened to a webinar on water resources and got this idea that maybe we could design a serious beaver game that would maybe be played by different stakeholders, private landowners, government people, environmentalists, community members, that would help them see a bigger picture of working with beavers and how it can be done. So I was like, whoa, this would be awesome. I wonder if they would let me spend some time working on a serious beaver game. So I ran it by you, Alexa, and you were like, whoa, yeah, actually, we kind of need that. Go ahead and try it out. So that's what I'm working on. Stay tuned for more updates on that.
Let me just add one more thing. One of the coolest, I'd never heard of serious games before Josiah brought this concept to me as a potential project to work on. But one of the things I love most about it is the opportunity for different stakeholders to play different roles in that sort of management game, to try to see perspectives that they wouldn't normally easily be able to step into unless they were in a low pressure environment where they are asked to take on a different role, a pretend role, a role play. And we need this to be able to collaborate better as multi-perspective, multi-priority stakeholder communities, especially around water and especially around beaver, which are considered a nuisance or a pest. most of the time since we eradicated them for an economic opportunity and a political opportunity back in the 1800s. So that's what I'm most excited to apply this to our larger stakeholder community. And yeah, at Josiah, you've done a great job spearheading it, and I can't wait to see the next phase completed.
Yeah, so where it's at right now, we're doing beta testing well, we'll soon do beta testing after I get a version for us to play very soon. The next few months, that will be, it's going to be a constant process of improving
Evolution.
it. Yeah, of improving the design of the game and how it all works. It is going to be fun. Serious games are not meant to be just educational. They're also fun. So maybe you guys, the listeners, will be able to play this someday, actually. What our plan is to debut the Serious Beaver game at some workshops and probably, hopefully, a Beaver conference one day, maybe in the next year, and just see where it goes. If it goes really well, I think it'd be cool to develop it into a commercial product, but I'm sure that's tons of work, so I'm not sure where that's going to go.
We'll see what kind of time you have on your hands when you're done with grad school.
Yeah, no kidding.
What do you see as your next step after the Beaver Project? I mean, you have 1 year left of grad school.
Yeah.
What do you imagine a short year from now?
Oh, man. So I have 1 more year at Oregon State University in my master's program, and that's going to be a jam-packed year. I'm actually planning to do a whole bunch of travel and write my thesis, defend my thesis. After that, I think I'm going to need a little bit of a break from professional and academic things. So I'm hoping to do a bit of travel, and then honestly, ideal first job would be working with beavers. There are a lot of places I could do that. Oregon has a lot going on and needs more as well. I don't know, maybe I'll end up coming back to the Methow Beaver Project at some point, who knows.
One other question that I think will be interesting for folks: what is your graduate project?
Okay. Yeah, that's another exciting project. So I'm working kind of at the intersection of climate change and water, specifically looking for ways to measure sustainability in water systems at the scale of colleges and universities. The reality is that we need to be managing our water more sustainably, but we don't often even know how much water we're using for certain things like irrigation on a big college campus. And those are numbers that we need to be measuring and tracking and trying to cut down in strategic ways. So my whole project is looking for metrics, looking for different things that can be measured to track water sustainability on these scales, and then to encourage people to set goals for those things, to measure it, to have targets that they're working for, and to set goals. So that's my thesis, and that'll be out for sure by June 2022.
Well, it's certainly needed. We need that in every community, and that scale of university fits right on with the rural community sizes. You can see it, apply it.
Pardon to interrupt your thesis conversation.
We're right in the middle of recording something.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
recording that? Oh, that's cool. That was a nice interruption, though.
Well, yeah, you're good.
So
We'll
you don't
just
smoke, though?
no.
Who's that? It's big. No. It's not an insult. I'm just saying. I think people have a choice.
We'll just
That
cut
was
that out.
Well, thank you, Josiah, for taking the time not only to develop this podcast, but to also sit with me and make sure we have a great record of your really influential time here with the Methow Beaver Project. And I certainly hope we have more interactions with you in the future beyond your graduate degree. But I know you're going to do great things. So good luck.
Thank you very much, and thanks for interviewing me on the podcast.
Thanks
it was
for the
great.
opportunity.
Absolutely. Well,
Check.
I'm in the frame. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're both here.
Yep. Well, guys, final interview with the employees of the Methow Beaver Project. I have here with me Julie Nelson. Julie, I finally tracked you down to get the interview. It's been a little while, busy schedules and stuff. So can you tell us first what your role title is?
My title is Education and Outreach Coordinator, and I have the wonderful opportunity of working with school kids, and all the way from kindergarten through high school, and then occasionally college students when they come through, and supporting their research. And it's been really fun. And,
Nice.
And do a lot of work with the volunteers. I manage them and try to keep them busy. And my average day could be anything.
I like it.
It could be anything.
I'll ask you more about that in
Yeah.
a minute. But first, can you tell us the story of how you got to the Methow Beaver Project?
Got to the Methow Beaver Project. I was finishing graduate school in 2013, and there was this little ad that said, Methow Beaver Project looking for volunteers. And I thought, great, why not? So I became one of those indispensable, I'm here in your face volunteer. And 2 years later, they gave me a job, and I've been here ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
So where'd you go to grad school, and what'd you study?
I have a master's in zoology and teaching science, and Miami University of Ohio. In
Wow.
Ohio. Yeah.
Huh.
So, yeah, it's kind of a different career change.
Yeah, that's
So,
super cool. How long have you been in the Methow Valley?
this is my
Cool.
eighth season.
Okay.
8 years. So it's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Okay, yeah. Tell us what you do. You said there's no average week.
There-
What are some of the common activities for
Common
you?
activities, a lot of grant writing, coordinating things with schools, trying to do presentations. Right now, I'm very excited. I'm going to go in, and I have a year-long commitment with the Pascal Sherman Indian School in Omak to do a very regular teaching, co-teaching with one of the nature immersion teachers over there. And it's going to be really fun. We get to merge Western science with Indigenous knowledge. So there'll be 6th and 7th graders getting both of those simultaneously throughout the season. So it's going to be really interesting and really fun.
Yeah, that
So
sounds really
that's
good.
the big project for the coming year.
Wow. Is that like a once a week deal, or
It's
how?
going to be every other week for the school year, and then one field day every other month, I think, at the moment. We're still working
Okay.
out the details.
Yeah.
But it'll be a full field day going out. And so the opportunity is the tribe is restoring Omak Creek right now, and they put a bunch of BDA, Beaver Dam analogs in, and it is adjacent to the school.
Mm.
It is such an opportunity to get kids from the school out in the stream and working with these science and fishery folks and inspiring them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we're really excited about
yeah,
that.
that's so cool. I love that. I wish we could do more with schools. And it's tough
Yeah.
right now, but yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, since you do so much with
Mm-hmm.
kids and with education, what's it been like in the last year and a half with COVID?
Last year and a half, we've done a lot of outside classes, which is great. I've been up at the Methow Valley Elementary, and they have big tents out in the field, and each kind of like group has their own little tent, and you're just teaching outside. Everybody wears masks, and the kids are kind of distributed out, keeping the distance. It's worked out. It's
Okay.
worked out.
Yeah.
They do pretty good outside.
Nice.
Yeah, and we have such great weather. You know, why not be outside?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me why you care about this kind of work and what motivates you on a day-to-day basis to do this kind of work?
Besides them being cute. Those beavers are just so cute. You know, over my tenure, I've handled probably hundreds of beavers, and each one is unique. Each one has got its own little preference and its own little personality, and they're just charming. But when you go out into the landscape and you come upon a beaver pond, to me that's like you found the end of the rainbow. It is so exciting to be at this space. It's just vibrating with life, you know. And you're supposed to be there monitoring for beavers, but you see the garter snakes, and then you see the dragonflies and the frogs, and it's just this beautiful place of life. And it's really just fun to be there. And to know that there's this little rodent out there creating all of this It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's super amazing. So, I don't know. And they're just fun to watch.
Yeah.
When they're at the hatchery, you could just go and it's like, you could just watch them and they're just interesting to watch.
Yeah.
So- Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. What do you see your work looking like in the future with the Methow Beaver Project?
In the future? Wow. I'd love to see, in the perfect world, more coexistence and really getting the more of the community to buy into coexistence, and being able to talk to more landowner groups. There's some groups we haven't been able to connect with yet, and it's just who you know, and being able to get them to come on board, that would be awesome. Not only here in the Methow, but over in the Okanagan. We have a lot of just public announcements, just talking to all kinds of groups who want to solve the issues of beavers by themselves when there's better options than taking things in your own hands. My role will probably just keep being education, and that's great. Making more little scientists as we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Inspiring the next generation.
Yeah,
Very important.
and it's really important.
And fun.
And it's when kids say everything's been discovered. There's nothing left to discover. Really?
I don't think
And I
so.
keep saying, we just haven't come up with the right questions yet.
Yeah.
And so it really, to keep kids inspired about science is a good goal to have going forward.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Thanks for sitting down with us.
You bet. Thank you very much, Josiah. It's been a pleasure.
Cool. So that wraps it up for this episode, guys. Interviewing the 5 of us at Methow Beaver Project: Willy Dugauy, Joe Weirich, myself, Josiah Shaver, your host, Julie Nelson, and of course you heard Alexa Whipple last episode. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, if you want to rate this episode, rate the podcast, leave a review, that would be super cool. And also, again, if you want to volunteer with us, we're always looking for volunteers with a wide range of different skill sets that can help us. Thanks for tuning in. May the beavers live on, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.